Good morning. What is great, good, and real? And welcome to day 35 of the Do You Rules live stream experience. And because I am a human posturing as someone behind a microphone, that would imply that I'm a host, I think, which means I have things to say. And hopefully you want to listen to them. Oh, it's going to be one of those days. But regardless, as I settle in emotionally, blessings. Hold on, because I feel myself about to get into a fire. Into a fire. Let's get right into this. What time is it? Chapstick. The calm before the storm. Water. Red Book of Power. Red Book of Power. I love this red book. I woke up this morning. 2:30 calls me a lot. 2:30 calls me a lot. And I woke up this morning with the book by my bed and I wrote some things in it because that's what a book with a pen is for, right? Here's what I want to discuss today. Let's start with blessings. Massive blessings of peace, prosperity, and love. May the essence, the energy, and aura of God be within you. May you identify it as you and walk away with peace, contentment, and love for yourself. I want to get into the idea that we are addicted to our lives, that we are addicted to our lives. And this came to me for many reasons, to which I'll begin with a realization of myself. I have a highly addictive personality. I do. If I reflect back into the entirety of all I can reflect back into for what is my existence and my life, I can tell you that when I decide to latch on to something, I don't know how to not do it until it's overdone. And that has an emotional impact on my being because what I've learned in having an addictive personality is the reality that when I am drawn to something, it is highly influential on me emotionally in a way that says, wow, this is great. Think the word addictive. Like when you think addictive and addicting, what do you think? And forget about what you're addicted to, because here's another reality. We can be addicted to many things. And you might go into the standard obviousness of maybe alcoholism, and I was really good at that. I was really good, and I thoroughly enjoyed the alcoholic experience. I just did. The way I thoroughly enjoy now getting up at 3:30. I was thoroughly addicted to everything that the persona allowed me for that indulgence in stimulants. I also enjoyed thoroughly the marijuana experience. I'm surprised with as much as I enjoyed the feeling and the sensation and the energy and all the things associated with being high, we can just say it that way, that I didn't take it further. Now, I can also reflect back and say that I was introduced to the possibility of that level of addiction and stimulant from just about inception. Growing up in the 80s, and I talk about the crack cocaine era, that's what it was. It was filled with zombies everywhere, man. And if you've ever seen somebody do the dope fiend lean, like they're on a train, on a bus, and it's moving and it's turning, and they're like leaning and they're leaning, but they never quite fall on their face. I always looked at that with great, like people laugh at it. I don't mean to laugh at it. I'm not trying to laugh at it. Let's be emotionally mature about what is likely occurring in that moment. That someone is so in another world. They've transcended the reality we're in. And I've also grown up in a household where there were addicts. And with respect to my family, I get very fearful of divulging too much about other people that had an impact on me because it was their life. I interpreted it and perceived it in a way because that's just the way life works. If you're around addicts, you pick up on addictive behavior in that you see how they move. And it is quite a fascinating perspective. Consider what an addict does. They are, again, we go into drugs and psychedelics and things that stimulate the mind because that's what addiction teaches us a lot, right? Funny enough, we dismiss alcoholism in a way. It's accepted to an extent. Like drink all you want as long as you don't cross lines and thresholds. Drink socially, drink at gatherings, drink together for community and to be the, togetherness. But, be careful that you don't cross that line into alcoholism. Why? It's a poison. It's a poison. It's an accepted poison. So we have limits to what we allow ourselves to be consciously addicted to. In any event, the life of an addict, watching an addict is powerful. Because if you focus in on what they're focused in on, you might misconstrue what's occurring as they're just an addict. They're beneath, less than. They're all these derivatives of terribleness associated with life, because here's also a reality. That level of addiction compromises you so much emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, that you can't really endeavor out to be successful the way society aligns you to be successful. You can't really hold down a life as an addict in that way. That's just the truth. A poisonous addict, someone who is constantly taking themselves out of this reality. You just cannot. However, because they're so addicted, they will do anything and go to great lengths to ensure that they can satisfy their addiction. And now left to observe what they are doing, and I've been part of, trust me, man, you don't know what it's like to be in your home where you should be comfortable and have to sleep in your clothes. I got some, man, listen, the addiction is, I'm very sensitive when it comes to that because I've experienced it, and all I'm saying is I empathize with it. It's a painful thing. I had someone who was family who wound up becoming a counselor for addiction. And we talked about somebody who was really close to me in my life and how that person impacted my life in directly and indirectly. If you haven't realized yet, like addicts have an impact directly and indirectly. And they don't realize it because they're just focused on the addiction. I had a very direct and poignant conversation with my uncle who was the counselor. And I'll make a really long story short. I just asked some questions about why and some of the standards. What's the deal? How does this person not realize and understand? And his response to me was, this is a sickness. It's a disease. And when you're sick, and you have a disease and you don't get medication, you don't get better. And I dismissed that in a way as weak to say, this wasn't a genetic or some sort of disease that you woke up with that you had no control over. So I couldn't empathize in that way. Like, you didn't wake up and receive a death sentence like, ooh, you got a year to live because that's terrible. That happens. That to me is how I interpret a sickness and illness and a disease. This is, you are, maybe you are, but this is a self-inflicted disease. This is a self-inflicted sickness. We could debate and argue how you fall into these traps. We could debate and argue the sensitivity around how this occurs, because it occurs in our worlds quite frequently. I don't know the percentages and the data, but if you come from where I come from, there's addicts everywhere. It doesn't change. Is there more or less? There is. And they'll continue to be, because that's just the life of an addict. That's just the life that we have, where people are drawn to this level of ascension. We don't want to use specific words that talk about the power. If we can again go back to what I mentioned the other day, the vibration. Someone who is an addict has a massively high vibration towards, I'm going to get what I want, regardless of what it takes to get there. Now, again, you look at the end result and what they're chasing and you say, why do that? It's not helpful. It's not conducive to a healthy lifestyle. But if you eliminate and you become more objective, and I talk about being subjectively objective and objectively subjective, listen to and understand to the power emotionally of what that can mean. If you simply observe and take it for what it is, and you remove the impact it has to that person and to the world that's around that person, and just understand what's occurring, massively powerful. Massively powerful. And in that way, I can say that addicts are supremely successful in life. Now, before I talk about how they're successful in the power and how I have an addictive personality and what that could mean possibly, because there's a lot we're going to get into and we got to talk about, right? I couldn't align with this being a disease and a sickness, because to me, you're weak. Because you have responsibilities. There are sacrifices you have to make towards a path of it's not righteousness, but of making decisions that are conducive to a healthy lifestyle. Inclusive of, if you create a world where you are being impacted and you have an impact on, and you start to become a more responsible person as far as hierarchy. We all have hierarchy. What is your role and responsibility in life when you're an addict and you're chasing this one thing, and that thing you're chasing is destroying you? Then naturally you're pushing away all of your other responsibilities. It's your choice. Now, while we see the dope fiend, the crack addict, the person who's on all these things that are destroying them, what is the difference between somebody who works 20 hours a day? What is the difference between somebody who says, I'm going to chase this career, but I'm not really around my family but for 1 out of the 7 days of the week? And even when I'm around them, I'm not really connected. I'm disconnected because why? I'm addicted to that work lifestyle. I'm addicted to all the richness that comes with it. What is that richness? You're still sacrificing. You're still, in a way, pushed and influenced and seduced by the emotional rush and authority that comes with that level of addiction. It just happens to be that it's focused on work. Work, whatever that work is. Does that make you any different from the crack addict, from the drug addict, from the person who is an alcoholic? What's the difference? If you're imbalanced in a way that makes you so addicted that you can only see one thing, and that thing that you see becomes a detriment to everything else that's around you, possibly maybe define it however you want to define it. What is the difference? Why is one more accepted than the other? I could even argue sometimes that the person at least, or maybe not, if you want to compare and contrast, the addict that is seeking a substance, some kind of pill or needle or beverage, in order to attain a certain level of of feeling, and it's almost a nirvana. I've never been that high. I've never been that high. But clearly, if you watch them and you see how they pursue this day after day, you ever seen somebody go through withdrawal? You ever see somebody go through withdrawal? That's deep. Not the withdrawal from alcohol. I don't know. I'm not. I think either way, a substance is a substance. It's tough. Substance abuse is substance abuse. That's deep. But you ever see somebody go through withdrawal? Think about the pain on the body, the pain on the mind. It's not. It is intense. It's scary to watch. And the person is withdrawing from what? Something that they likely would never feel otherwise. It's got to be deep. That chase for that feeling has got to be deep. You could argue it's euphoric. We talked about ecstasy yesterday. Ironically, it's a drug, ecstasy. Why is it labeled these things? Because it takes you to places. You transcend the physical. It has to be. If you've ever had anything to smoke or drink, you can at least align with it that way. There's a feeling. That workaholic, are they not getting that same feeling? When they close the deal, when they get the promotion, when the business takes off, when they get on the stage? My point to that being, what's the limit? What's more acceptable? Is there a difference? I can tell you from someone who is, again, highly addictive, to the point where I can easily lose sight of everything around me, that I would take caution with what you drive your addiction towards in any space or capacity. Life, the intentionality I'm learning, I believe, that I'm becoming witness to, is don't at all dismiss or believe that I think in some way we should work less. In fact, I believe deeply we should find out how to work as much as we possibly can. The way that I tell you, if you build rhythms and patterns and habits and routines towards a passion, if you can become addicted to something that rises your soul and makes you feel like you are valuable, fulfilled, and actualized, then you never stop working, because the mind is constantly moving in the direction that you tell it to, even when it rests. But in that way, you need to rest. In that way, you need balance. In that way, you have to certainly find rhythms and patterns and habits that keep you stable, to allow you to push really hard when you got to push really hard, and to pull back when you need to pull back. You also have to be addicted enough to understand, I know when I need to have some patience. I know when I need to force, because I have the energy in all levels. That energy is available to me. Emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, physically. I certainly encourage you to push the boundaries. I also believe that when you extend the boundaries, just like the cup, when you build a bigger cup, you could absorb more wisdom and knowledge and information, and you don't become ignorant and naive. You don't ignore what else is around you. In the same way, when you push and push and push and push, the limits to which you can absorb and absorb and absorb, extend. You can extend your limit physically. The way you lift and you lift and you lift, you get a little bit stronger and stronger and stronger. Is the more you think and think and think, you think till it hurts. And then as you get there, you pause, you give yourself a rest, and the next time you think and think and think, you can think a little bit deeper. You look, you look, you look, you write, you write, you write, you persist, persist, persist. And as you do that, in every facet, you pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray and pray. Ooh! And you pray until the conversations with God, your maker, your creator, become deeper and broader and more expansive. And when you reach a limit where it gets overwhelming and exhausting, and you're becoming a little too self-centered, when you're becoming a little too blind, you pause, you stop, you reflect, you give time. You begin to exude patience. The more you stretch and stretch and stretch, the more you enhance your stamina for life, the more you build upon your addiction in one direction. You have to seek the balance that allows you to continue to stretch. The point that I'm trying to drive is that what I've learned about my addictive ways, is it can lead you to become this incessant, overbearing, overdriven, almost psychotic person in the direction of something that is intended to be beneficial. I believe when we see it, we know it benefits us. And why not be benefited? I'm not going to judge you on what you choose to make benefit you. I'm just going to say at some point you got to be conscious of your choices. But as you're on that psychotic chase, you have to be able to find the balance to say, it's not going to come to me as fast as I want it to come. It's likely not going to happen in a way that you expect it. You can't put your finger on it. You won't even know when you got there. So because all that is true, I'm not telling you per se to temper your drive or your expectations or to weaken yourself in that way. No, keep broadening. But know that as you become addictive in one way, you got to be able to see what is occurring outside of you. You can't go so deep inside that you forget what's outside. You can't go so deep outside that you forget what's inside. What I'm suggesting also is, as someone who can acknowledge my addictions, the reality of what I'm learning about consciousness and life and thought and God and universe and spirit is that we're all addicted. You today, we today, us today, and how we live are addicted to our current lifestyles. However your lifestyle is, whether you're a drug addict or a work addict or somewhere in between. At some juncture, you pursued until you got something that you wanted, and like any dope fiend or workaholic, you'll never receive that high again. But you keep going back and you keep going back and you keep going back. Why? Because the movement in that direction that you chased that gave you that is all of a sudden all you can do to keep that. That is the reality we come to with the addiction of our lives. I have some things I wrote down that I want to get to. Give me a second to breathe and collect myself. Set a timer for 5 a.m. Doesn't matter how many times I roll over my blanket, I roll over it again every time. And you think that that's unintentional, and it is, but it is in your conscious. I'm gonna fucking sneeze. Excuse me for another brief moment. All right. So we're addicted to our lives, whether you accept it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not, whether you're aware of it or not. And look, if you are where you are and it's clearly where you want to be, nothing else needs to be done. I'm not suggesting a lot of your day 35 in, sometimes the improvement process and the drive towards realization, actualization, and fulfillment, the definition of success that you see is the repeat process of continuing to be you once you've attained. Not everyone wants to keep stretching. I briefly touched on this yesterday. There is and there should be an enough button. When you have enough, it's not that you go into sort of, you just kind of flatline and skate. No, there's a maintenance, yes, in the language of maintenance. But the reality to anyone who attains what they want to attain, where they want to attain it to, the maintenance of that is intense. It is. Because at minimum, you can never fall off. And knowing I can never revert back to what I used to be is enough incentive to keep going where you need to go. So if you're not where you want to be, there is still work to do. If you're not where you want to be, if you're not where you want to be, if you're looking at me and I'm looking at you and you're looking at you and we're looking at ourselves, if you're not where you want to be, there is still work to do. This is not a cliche motivational theme or message. This is a reality. You must come to acceptance. You must say it to yourself. You have to believe that yourself. You have to first know, self, I am not where I want to be. So the only logic that comes with I'm not where I want to be is this. I have work to do. We have work to do. Let's go do it. And in that way, when there's work to do, it's not a question of what time is it, what day is it, what week is it, what month of it is it, what year is it. It's just a question of what is the work that needs to get done. So if there's work to do, what is the work that needs to get done? And it needs to get done now. There's always work to do. And when you realize that part of the work is to relax, recover, and rest, then you can really begin to understand how to drive towards the work that needs to get done all the time. I can't reinforce this enough. From anything I've learned, who am I? I'm a big nobody. Cool. There's always work to do. It needs to get done now. I touched on this briefly yesterday. The difficulty we experience with success when we drive towards new success, when we break old addictions, the old addiction of us for a new potential addiction of us. When we say, no more, no mas, we're moving in a different direction. Success doesn't look like us because we've been so unsuccessfully successful. Think about what that means. That the minute you make this change, whatever change, however many days in, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, however many times you've made this promise to yourself, you revert back into your old addictions. Even if those old addictions have made you what you would perceive as unsuccessful, you have become successfully unsuccessful. In that even though I may not like where I'm at, I still get through. I still get by. I still maintain. It's back to that maintenance. And in the same way, an addict can keep going back for that same fix that they know is going to do nothing, but continue to cause conflict in their lives. You can go back for that same fix that puts you in that same trap that you keep complaining about all the time. Imagine that. That you know you can look in the mirror and know there's work to do because I need to get somewhere else. Yet, continue to do everything that has gotten you to exactly where you are. Is that not madness? Is that not literal madness? Can we not agree that repeating what you are doing in order to get to the same place, and the same place you are getting to is not somewhere you want to be, and you're going to complain about it come 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 9 o'clock, come Saturday, or drink yourself into oblivion to try to forget it, to do it all over again? What are we doing? I'm just asking the question. I'm asking the question, at what point do you deem what you are doing unsuccessful and realize that you are successfully unsuccessful and stop it? There's work to do. There's work to do, and we don't have time. We need to do it every now we get. Now, or not. Success doesn't look like us because we've never really seen this us. We only know the other us. Imagine that. That you could be looking at a reflection in the mirror, and imagine that reflection wasn't reflecting to you what you're reflecting to it. Meaning, what if it talked back to you and you just listened? And the person you were listening to was the other you, the future you, the potentiality of all you could be. What would it tell you? Have you not heard this before? Have you not heard the voice in your head speak, scream, and pray for a little bit of a release? If you could look in the mirror at yourself and know that there's things to do, there's work to do, it gotta be now, and you stopped speaking, you just looked at who was in the mirror and you let that person speak back to you, what would that person say to you? And how crazy that we know what that person would say to us, and we look at that person and we know we could be that person, but it doesn't look like us because we haven't been that person long enough. We can't continue to fight for that person long enough until we become addicted to the habit of being that other person. We go back into seeing and knowing who that other us is. We are addicted to being successfully unsuccessful. If, of course, presuming, of course, you believe there's something in the mirror telling you it's time to change. I'm throwing it out there. I'm asking a question. In the same way, it causes me to reflect. I ask this question. What is so easy about comfort? We talk about comfort. We know comfort. It's a cliche. It's something we don't want to necessarily be in. What is so easy about comfort, particularly when most of us are so uncomfortable in our comfort? Successfully unsuccessful, uncomfortably comfortable. Imagine that you could come to the realization that I'm uncomfortable with where I am in my life. I'm uncomfortable with this level of comfort. So why do you go back into that discomfort? Why do you fight the discomfort? Why do we fight the discomfort of growth when we know that it is uncomfortable being as comfortable as we are now? When we know that if we were giving ourselves advice and watching ourselves lounge and slouch and overeat and over destroy ourselves into oblivion, all the addictions you already have, the addiction to the life that is comfortably uncomfortable, comfortable, successfully unsuccessful. Why is it so easy to do that? Most of us want out. Most of us want out of this, but we stay here. Most of us want out of being uncomfortably comfortable and successfully unsuccessful. Most of us want out, but we stay there. Most of us see the reflection in the mirror screaming at us, urging us, encouraging us, trying everything it could to move us, and we stay there. However, and in the same way, we aren't trapped. There's nothing keeping you there. You have no restrictions, no chains, no cuffs, You're not tied down. Why? Why do we remain there? Why do we see the reflection? Why are we stuck in this discomfort and stay there? I don't know how to answer that. Outside of, as someone who is easily addicted, you haven't realized you're addicted to that. Here's what I wrote down too. This state of being, this existence, living like this, uncomfortably comfortable, unsuccessfully successful. It's like an unlocked prison where all the doors are closed, and yet we have the key to this unlocked prison. We know everybody in there. We know what happens. We know what to expect. Yet we stay there. Why are we walking around caged in, locked in, knowing what's going to happen and staying there? When we have the key, we know all the guards, we know all the escape routes, we know how to get out and never come back. And we stay there. And now imagine this. And once we're comfortable as the prisoner, we can't live without the box, the locks, or the guards that keep us caved in, that keep us locked up. And the truth is, none of it is real, including even if it's happened already. It's not real. The discomfort, the lack of success, the unease is only as real as we allow it to be. And we are addicted to repeating these behaviors. We are addicted to continuing this identity. We are addicted to giving the stimulant of every now and again the crack, cocaine, dopamine rush of staring in the mirror, to scream at ourselves, to give us this quick, invigorating rush of emotion, to pick up the phone and call somebody and tell them all the things we're going to do, to hang up and then not do it. We are the prisoner, the guard, and the institution. We are the lock and the key. If only we could change our mind, we could change our life. I am who I say I am. Do you and stay rich.